Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today we are going to make a beautiful scrappy quilt called Ribbons. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Michelle, and today we are going to make a great scrappy quilt that I'm calling Ribbons based on a traditional block. I have this book, the 1000 Great Quilt Blocks, and in here I found some inspiration for this quilt with a pattern called here it is, the Interwoven Puzzle. And I'll put a little photo here of the block from the book so you can see it up close. You'll see that it is made completely of background fabric and half square triangles. And so I wanted to also dig into my ruler collection to see if I had a quick and easy way of making half square triangles. And in particular, I wanted to make sure that I could use some of the standard size scraps that I already save. And so that's where I rediscovered the Easy Angle ruler. I don't think I've ever used this. And you'll see in my quilt rulers, the good, the bad, the ugly, I put that out in January of this year. I'm trying to make an effort to make sure that I rediscover and use the things that are already in my collection, and this is one of them. And I think it was probably inspired 10 years ago or more from Bonnie Hunter, and I think this is a tool that she uses. And so when I think scrappy quilts, I always think Bonnie Hunter. And so this was a great opportunity for me to dig out the instruction booklet, dig out the ruler, which I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's perfect, suggesting that I probably have never used it, and see if I could make it work for this project. And after doing a little test, I'm thrilled and excited because I'm going to be able to make 2.5-inch half square triangles with 2.5-inch strips, which is absolutely brilliant. So let's dive right in. The inspiration for this quilt comes from this book that I have. I use this all the time for inspiration and I love it. 1000 Great Quilt Blocks. And in here, I've marked the page. Let's see if I can get that up or closer to the camera, is this little block here, and it's called the Interwoven Ribbon. And as you can see, it's a lot of half square triangles, plus some solid blocks. So I want to take you through how to make these blocks, and then how we're going to put them all together into the quilt. And I'm also really excited to be using my Easy Angle ruler. If you want to make this project and you don't have this ruler, no trouble at all. Just start with 3-inch squares and make half square triangles in that traditional way with a line down the center, 1/4-inch seam on both sides, split it apart, square up those half square triangles to 2.5 inches. But I am going to use this Easy Angle ruler. This is also a scrappy project, so I just have a few pieces here just to get us started. I went into my scrap drawer and I did a video not that long ago on how I select scraps for a scrappy quilt. And you'll see here from the scraps I've selected, I've got a green here as well, all lined up. These are things that I would put in the not brights pile. Everything here is a little muted. It's got a little bit of a yellowy mustard sort of undertone. It's just in the not brights category. And because that's pretty much my favorite colorway, that's what we're going to use for this project. And in the scrap drawer, I also have these beige and cream colors that are going to be the background for this project. So Scrappy Fabrics 2.5-inch square line, 2.5-inch strips right out of the scrap drawer, which is really exciting. Scrap background and with this ruler. So let me just get set up and I will show you how to use the ruler. So I've zoomed you in a tiny little bit. The ruler is great because it actually comes with instructions on the back, instructions in multiple languages, but the English is on the back. And it's really not very complicated. I'm just going to square off my end here. I have a piece of my printed fabric and a piece of my background stacked together. This is important. So I have the background fabric here, and then I have my green on top. And so the ruler, you want to look this little dark corner, this little printed corner here, that's where we're going to start. That I have to work this way because I'm not good at working upside down. But I'm going to go across the ruler to the 2.5 inch mark. That's the line that I'm going to use to trim because that's the size of the half square triangle that I want to make. So I want to make sure that my point is, am I doing this right? No, I think I'm doing this backwards. See, this is learning for everyone. Let me flip this over. Let me line up. Hang on. Here we go. Line up the 2.5 inch line. And you can see that it's not, should find a piece of, here we go. Maybe a piece of white might make this easier to see. It's lined up purposefully so that you have a square, a flat top. And then I'm going to cut along the ruler. So let me take the white background out, put this down, and slice. So the piece that we end up here has this flat edge on it, but this is your seam guide. So when I take it over to the machine, I'm going to sew down that line for that perfect 1/4 inch seam. And from there, once I open it up, I will have a perfect 2.5 inch square, half square triangle that requires no trimming, which is amazing. So following the instructions, the next cut, without moving this at all, requires me to turn my ruler upside down, overhang the strip by this little piece. So I'm just going to line it up, and conveniently the 2.5 inch line lines up along that edge, and I make a second cut. And so there's no waste. I'm able to go down the entire line, cutting these really great pieces to make my 2.5 inch half square triangles with no waste and from 2.5 inch strips. I'm completely thrilled. So I'm going to cut a few of these. I'm going to cut a whole bunch of these for the project, but I want to show you how to make each individual block. So I'm going to go sew up a few of these, and then we'll come back and do that. So in almost no time at all, I have a pretty large pile of scrappy half square triangles, and this has been a complete revelation. These little pieces are fantastic. They have a perfect corner here and one edge with the little dog ears, and that's because before I pressed it, that's where the dog ears are on the not flat corner, if that makes any sense. That's that sharp point that we cut. But the flat edge, when you open it up, it takes away any dog ear that might be there. So you can trim these off if you want, or you can just leave them. I generally prefer to trim them off. And as you may have noticed, I pressed my seams open. I am a big fan of pressing open the seams when I make half square triangles. And so this is just, you could even do this with scissors, I think. It's just a matter of, or you might even be able to, yeah, you could even just eyeball this. You don't even need a ruler to do it, just to cut those little dog ears off. So I'm going to trim the dog ears across a lot of these blocks. I want a nice variety to show you how to make this woven ribbon block. I'm going to divide the big block into quadrants. So we're going to make 1/4 of it. And then we'll make 4 of them, of course, and then rotate them around and put the 4 of them then together into the larger block. I think just breaking it down makes it easier to digest, and it's also easier to make it scrappy if we just make little sections and do what we can to make those sections nice and scrappy. So I'm just going to keep trimming these little dog ears, and you can see how quickly this goes. I'm actually able to talk and trim at the same time. And because these are so accurate, I'm so pleased. Because these are so accurate, I'm just eyeballing and trimming off these dog ears along this edge. And that's going to be great. So I'm going to do all that trimming, and then I'll come back and show you the 3 types of blocks we need for each quadrant. I have all the little dog ears cut off, and now let me show you the 3 blocks that we're going to need for this project. The first one, and they're all 4 patches, I should stress that. The first one, we need 2 of our half square triangles with 2 plain background pieces. All right, so that's easy enough. The second block that we're going to need is kind of similar, except the opposite, where our half square triangles point inwards with some background blocks like this. And the third block that we're going to need, we need 3 half square triangles and 1 background block. And we put those together like this. Those are the 3 blocks. Now you need twice as many of these as you need of each of these. So each quadrant will have 1 of these and 2 of these. And therefore each square will have 4 of each of these and 8 of these. So I am going to make up a few of these so I can show you then how to assemble the block. So I've sewn together the 3 blocks that we need for this project for each quadrant. And just to recap, you need blocks that have the half square triangles pointing out with the background, half square triangles pointing in with the background, and blocks that have 3 half square triangles and 1 background. You need 1 of these, 1 of these, and 2 of this one. And these are going to come together to make one of the 4 quadrants of our larger design. And this is what that quadrant looks like. For this project, and you'll see in the pattern that's available on my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting.com, in the quilt diagram, you'll see that the layout that I've planned is a 6x8 layout. So 6x8 of these units. So that's 48 of these blocks. And I've done the math on my little scratch pad here. You're going to need 48 of this block, 48 of this, and 96 of this one. And then that all multiplies out to need 336 half square triangles and 240 background squares. This is all going to be in the pattern, so don't worry. But I just wanted to convey the idea that you are going to need a lot of half square triangles. And so this easy angle ruler has been a huge help to start to generate that vast number that you're going to need for this project. So this is our layout. And with 4 of these, and I've got 3 of them made. I'm going to make up my last one here, and then I'm going to show you how these all come together to make an even larger design, which will then get repeated across the quilt. So I am going to lay out these 4 blocks, and let me just do that right now. I always make a model and use that as my example. And so you can see we lay out these blocks like this. This one goes here, and this one, make sure that those are all twisted the right way. Now I probably should swap these around a tiny bit because I've got quite a lot of blue here side by side. I haven't done as much cutting as I probably should have in order to get a lot of variety in these blocks, but I wanted to show you how to do this before I spend probably a few hours cutting into my scraps. So the final project will have a lot more variety in it than these little blocks do. But this is now just a simple 4 patch. So I'm going to take it over to the machine and I'm going to sew this together. And then I'll show you how the 4 quadrants come together to make the block that we need for the project. So I've just sewn that together and it matches the other one, and I'll just bring in the 2 others that I had sewn previously. And now to lay out the final ribbon block, we're just going to start to rotate these. And I'm going to reference my diagram so I get this right. This one goes like this. This one goes like that. This one here, and this one like that. So the same block made up 4 times, twisted into each different direction. You can see there's these sort of voids in the block, and they're all pointing outward now. And this is the final block to go into the quilt. So with 48 of these quadrants, we'll sew those together into, ultimately there'll be 12 of this shape. And this will all get sewn together into the quilt. It is a quilt that uses a little bit more background than printed fabric, but I really love the illusion of these ribbons all woven together. I'm going to sew this together and I'll bring it back for a final reveal, and then I'll show you the final quilt. And so this is the final quilt block. I think it looks so cute. I will need to vary some of my colors to make the final Scrappy block, but I have a lot of half square triangles ahead of me and quite a lot of sewing, but I think this is going to turn out really, really well. Thanks very much for watching this Scrappy quilt video on the ribbon quilt. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's made a little bit of a dent into your scrap bin. And if you have this ruler, I hope you've had a chance to rediscover it. I've been really pleased with the way that these half square triangles turned out, limited waste, and using a standard size scrap in my collection. And the final result is just so beautiful and cheerful. There's some great movement across the quilt, and I'm just thrilled with the way that it's turned out. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.